Hi, good evening and welcome to Larkspur City Council on Wednesday, August 21st. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yep. Councilmember Haroff?
Here.
Councilmember Way?
Here.
Councilmember Hilmer?
Here.
Vice Mayor Chu?
Here.
And let it be known for the record that Mayor Morrison's absence is excused.
Okay, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, working a little blind right now, but I believe the first item on our agenda is a presentation from Marin Clean Energy. So tonight, public comment, right, okay. All right, off a little bit there. This is the time for public comment. If anyone in the audience would like to address the council on the matter that is not on tonight's agenda, and we can start with Ms. Winters.
Cindy Winter, 826 South Elysium. I hope you have all seen. Is this better?
Eat it.
All right, better? All right. I hope you have all seen the intersection of Magnolia and Bon Air Road, especially the bicycle slip lanes. And if you haven't, you should get on your bike and experience them. They are so much safer, a joy to ride, compared with the old travel lanes that cyclists shared with cars. And I should think drivers would like them too, because it keeps the cyclists out of their way and everyone can be safe. So it's a wonderful amenity for the city. That's all.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Okay. Can you raise your mic up a little bit towards your mouth, please?
How's that?
Yeah, that's better. And
Thanks for the opportunity tonight. I'm here on behalf of the Marin Park residents, and I believe there's a number of them here.
okay, could you introduce yourself for the record, please?
My name is Dick Hine. I'm here under two hats. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association at Contempo Marin Mobile Home Park in San Rafael. I'm also a vice president on the board of directors of the Golden State Mobile Homeowners League, the statewide organization that represents mobile homeowners. I happened a couple of weeks ago to catch the video of your meeting where a gentleman from the Park Owners Association was here, and he made a couple of statements which I need to correct with you. He mentioned that they are against rent stabilization ordinances, and when cities enact those, they quite often go to court about it. And he made the statement that San Rafael had spent several $1 million defending their rent control ordinance. That was a 14-year-long legal fight in federal court, and I was involved in that for the entire time. It ultimately went clear to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was ruled in favor of San Rafael. So he neglected to state that San Rafael won their case. He also neglected to state that San Rafael received $1.4 million in legal fees. So they did spend over $1 million, but they got it paid back. That is a tactic that the park owners use quite frequently, is to threaten city councils with legal action and excessive legal expenses should they enact a rent stabilization ordinance. About the same time San Rafael's suit was decided, the city of Goleta down near Santa Barbara had a very similar suit decided again in favor of the city. So there are two sets of suits here that have set precedent that rent control ordinances are constitutional. It's very important that you understand a basic difference between mobile home parks and apartments. If you live in an apartment and you don't like the rent increase or you don't like the park owner, you call your friends and get a U-Haul truck and you move. If you live in a mobile home park, you cannot do that. Technically, mobile homes could be moved, but that's about a $15,000 to $20,000 expense if you can find a park that has a vacant pad to put that mobile home on. GSMOL has an attorney who's a member of their board of directors, lives in Santa Cruz. He is an expert on rent control ordinances. I think your city staff may have been in contact with him. If not, I can get the contact information. He's certainly happy to provide you with several different cities' rent control ordinances, some of which have been tested in court. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can take one and tweak it around to suit your needs. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. If there's anything you'd like to send to the council, you can do it through the city clerk. And is that cityclerk@larkspurcityhall.org, correct?
It'll redirect there, cityoflarkspur.org.
Okay, thank you.
City clerk at cityoflarkspur.org.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Can everyone hear me? No. Is there a volume switch on this?
You'd have to just almost touch the mic.
Okay, how about that?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, there we go. I'm warmed up. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Mitch Powers. I live at Marin Park Mobile Homes since 2005. You've already heard our story. Since we got new owners in 2017 to 2018, in a 9-month period, we saw a 15% rent hike. 2019, as of June this year, we saw another 10% rent hike. Prior to the new ownership, for 12 years, rent increases were annually 2 to 5% max, usually more towards the 2 and 2.5%. Affordable housing in Marin is precious. We all know this. It's always in the media. We're always struggling to find new ways to create affordable housing units or to protect what we already have. You also know, and you've heard before in our July 17th meeting that we all had here, where we were on the agenda, that 80% of mobile homes in Marin have rent stabilization. San Rafael and Novato have created these great programs, and they work. So why not Marin Park? At the July 17th council meeting, there was a lot of discussion about rent stabilization. Some concerns I heard were about how rent stabilization would affect the surrounding community. I also heard talk about unintended consequences. I'm not aware of any unintended consequences in San Rafael or Novato, only that these cities are protecting a special segment, affordable housing. I just want to read a couple things from the Larkspur General Plan, City of Larkspur General Plan. On page 12 it says, provide the city's fair share of very low, and moderate income housing, and to ensure affordable housing remains affordable over a long term. You are talking about Marin Park. We are an ethnic community of Mexican Americans, Afro Americans, Caucasians, retired people, single people, working families. Also in the general plan, Larkspur City General Plan, it says on page 5, maintain the present mix of uses in the area east of Highway 101, especially the mobile homes affordable to seniors and to young families. Again, that is Marin Park. Almost done here. So I asked the council to continue to consider and hopefully move forward for rent stabilization for Marin Park. I see this, in my own opinion, as an initial goal with the long-term goal of purchase of the park. And the Marin County has already indicated an interest in that, and there are various nonprofits. What's really exciting about a potential long-term goal purchase of Marin Park is that, yes, we have existing units there already. There's about 85 mobile homes, but part of that park also includes an RV park, and there are about 80 to 85 spaces there. These could be converted into affordable mobile homes as well and add to the supply that Larkspur, the city of Larkspur, has. Now, it's not going to be one for one because the mobile homes will take a little more space than the RV spaces, but I would imagine you can probably have, with the relative space around them, probably 60 more mobile homes adding to the supply base of Larkspur. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Where are we on this?
Dan, Oh, do we have a general estimate of when this topic will come back before the council?
No, not the topic these speakers are specifically asking you about. We are issuing notice on renter protection discussions for September 4th. They're asking you about a rent control board for mobile home parks, and that's one of the items we told you we don't currently feel comfortable saying when we're going to be able to bring that back. It's
Okay.
a bigger topic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have a printed copy. Let's see if I can master this.
Might be easier just to detach it.
How about this?
That's good.
You know, how about this? Does it
Yeah.
work?
That works.
I also am a resident of Marin Park, and I wanted to just address 3 quick points that I think might be useful to us as the staff goes through its findings and making recommendations, and also to thank you all, the council members and the staff, for looking into this issue of renter protections. And as you know, we often come now in numbers, and I just wanted all our fellow Marin Park residents just to stand for a minute so we, by our presence, can say thank you to you all for your attention. Thanks guys. Here are my 3 real quick points. Our residents club, in addition to the things that Mitch has said, we really are looking at, among other things, 2 key points. One is rent stabilization, and the other is vacancy control. These are technical terms in the jargon that I'm sure the staff is aware of, and I just wanted to highlight them then as key items of concern that we have: rent stabilization and vacancy control. My second point is to tell a little story. And excuse me, my wife said if you don't read it, you're going to get off base. So I'm going to real quickly read several paragraphs. There is gentrification going on at Marin Park as a result of the way rents and ownership is being managed by the ownership. It cannot be said strongly enough that the Marin Park owners control who may purchase the 80 owner-occupied mobile homes. The park owners decide who lives in the park and who may not live there. As has happened in recent past years, a coach owner wants to move and puts a coach up for sale. An earnest buyer submits a purchase offer. The coach owner accepts the offer. In regular real estate transactions, that's almost always it. In this case, then the coach owner must submit the agreed upon sale to the Marin Park owners for a thumbs up or thumbs down decision on the contract. Marin Park owners have rejected sales in the recent past. Nobody but them, the Marin Park owners, know what criteria they use, but they can reject the sale and refuse to allow the coach owner to complete sale to the buyer of their choice. This can cause, as you could really understand, the coach owner to have to continue then to seek another buyer, to pay additional space rent until a purchase can be effected, and incur possible unwanted costs and inconveniences to their plans about moving on. One can suspect that an offer from a lower income purchaser may be discarded by Marin Park owners fiat for no other reason than to hold out for another purchaser who may be of higher financial means. This can also be thought to lead to more ready acceptance by these new buyers of space rent increases. So I ask you to please look at this control they have over our ability to sell our homes. My third point is a question. In terms of the public comments, is there a hard date by which public comments can be submitted to the staff so that they can use them in their deliberations in their work? And if not, or is there a soft date by which if you submit something, it's just too late for the staff, even though they'll accept that they really can't include it in their work? So that's a question. My other question is this. After the July 17th meeting, the Marin Park owners submitted a large number of documents as part of public comment. What is the proper process to comment on those? Is it improper to comment on them, or do we just make separate comments that do not refer to them by way of making arguments that we think may countervail against their comments. Is there some way that that information can be given to us?
I'll let Dan, how much lead time do you think your staff
Yeah,
needs?
how is this working so we know how to try to present information to you in a usable form?
Any member of the public can provide the staff with anything they want at any time.
Okay.
If you have some information you want to provide to the city, you should just submit it through the city clerk and say who you want it directed to. It's not my practice, nor do I think it's a practice of anyone who works for me, to be particularly swayed by information that was presented at public comment that wasn't germane to the topic at the time. And a lot of what
Of
you're
course, that's
describing,
understandable.
I don't know that we'll deeply analyze. As one gentleman alluded to, when we analyze these topics, we'll start mostly talking to other agencies as well as experts in the field.
Sure.
But you're welcome to give us anything. If you're concerned that we received misinformation, we'll take whatever you want.
Thank you.
There is no deadline because we haven't produced a staff report for the council. Once we assign this a date to be in front of the council, that will establish a deadline.
And then that sounds good. Thank you. And when that date is established, then what is the process after that? The time frame after that, so we may understand.
Staff typically publishes its staff report 6 days ahead of the council meeting, usually on the Thursday prior if everything's worked out correctly. Most people wait to see what the staff's written and then they submit comment after that. And it can come in at any time, but the sooner it comes in, the more readily we can pass it on to the 5 people that actually make the decision.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification, and thank you to the council.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else in the audience like to address the council on a matter that's not on the agenda tonight?
Thank you for allowing us to have our speech. My name's Anna Harrison, and I live at Marin Park. I want to thank Vice Mayor Chu for responding to my emails in the past, as well as Mayor Morrison. One thing that occurred to me this morning was the fact that we're looking at rents, and when I consider that we're in somewhat of a condo situation where we have a space that we're being charged a monthly rate for. I went online this morning and I actually went on to Redfin and looked up some condos that were two bedrooms, 1 bath, for example, in the Larkspur area. I came up with 6 of them with the 2-bedroom, 1 bath frame format. And the average price is $716,000. Now, when you have a condo, the condo association pays to paint your outside, which ours does not. It pays to re-roof, which ours does not. They have incredibly more plants and trees and things to take care of than our place. Half of them were also paying for water and garbage, and the other half they would pay for water and garbage. My point is this: $716,000 was the average of the 6 that came up. The average homeowner fee for all 6 of them was $551. My rent right now is $822. I am deeply upset by the fact that I'm going to have to move, and I hope that when rent stabilization comes through, that the consumer price index will only be raised by maybe a couple of more %, because at the end of 2024, I'll be paying $1122, and all I have is a piece of a parking lot, basically. Basically, we're all living in tough sheds with plumbing. So thank you for your time, and I guess that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. How many more people would like to speak on this topic? Okay. All right.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Eat the mic.
Okay. Bridget Gleason, I live in Marin Park also. You might just want to put us as an agenda item because we'll be back at every meeting. This is something we all care deeply about, and I think the city of Larkspur cares deeply about providing affordable housing. You have affordable housing present, but it's filtering away. It's dripping out. As Mitch explained about what happens, or maybe Tony explained it, I've lost track, when with the gentrification that's happening in the park, those units are not generally accessible to lower income folks. And to me, it makes sense that we have some control over that, whether that's the whole city, whether that's ultimately buying the park, which is something that I would like to see happen, the county, the city, or a nonprofit, or a conglomerate of various interests, including the current owners. But right now, what we have in front of us is the need to do rent stabilization and vacancy control. I want to thank you for your willingness to listen to us since we first came in July. I hope you'll be willing to continue to listen to us as we come and comment on various things. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, last chance. Anyone else have an issue they'd like to address to the council that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay. All right. Now I have my agenda in front of me, and our next speaker is going to be a presentation from Marin Clean Energy. We have Dawn Weiss, the executive officer from that agency. Welcome, Dawn. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Great to be back. Thanks so much for having me here today. I'm here to give you all an update, very brief update, and answer any questions that you might have. And just to kind of go back to the beginning, MCE was formed back in 2008 with Larkspur as a founding member. And currently, Councilmember Kevin Haroff serves as the Larkspur representative on our board of directors and has been there for many years. Also serves on a couple of our committees over the last few years. So we're grateful for the continued relationship with Larkspur. We began serving customers in 2010 in Larkspur, and we have grown quite a bit since that time. We're currently serving about 470,000 customers across 4 counties, including all of Marin, all of Napa, most of Contra Costa County, and parts of Solano County. We will actually be enrolling customers in unincorporated Solano County in the next year or so. We're in that process now. Also, since launching MCE, there's been a lot of interest in the type of program that we operate. And for those of you in the audience or folks that might not be familiar with us, we're a community choice program. So we allow our local government agency to become the power purchaser for the customers in our service area. And that includes residential, commercial customers, industrial, and municipal customers. This type of program was enabled by legislation back in 2002. And with MCE launching as the first community choice program in California, many have followed. And today there are 16 community choice programs across the state of California. So many that we now have a trade association, and there are active programs all over the state, as far north as Humboldt, as far south as Los Angeles, and soon San Diego will be launching their community choice program next year. So I'm happy to answer questions about the growth of community choice, but it's really been an exciting development, and a lot of the rationale for the formation of these programs has been, on one hand, to allow more access from the public for meetings like this, where we can have more transparency, more community engagement, and have a local government agency really making decisions about energy, where our energy comes from. The other rationale has been to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So MCE and many other community choice programs across the state really set the bar higher than state standards to get more renewable energy onto the grid while keeping prices competitive, and in most cases keeping prices even lower than customers would be paying for the generation that PG&E provided. Also, just as a reminder, We function to take care of the generation part of an energy bill, but PG&E continues to partner with us to deliver the energy, and they continue to bill customers. So there's still a customer relationship with PG&E. We work closely with them, but our board decides where the energy is going to come from. We've been able to launch a number of programs that I'll just touch on briefly as part of MCE's initiatives to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and support our local communities. One is a feed-in tariff program, and this is a program that allows local landowners or developers to sell energy to MCE under a fixed tariff for 20 years, and we pay a slightly above market rate to buy power produced within our service area. And this includes solar. It could also include biogas or wind. We've had some methane facilities express interest. Most of our feed-in tariff projects to date are solar, though. So we even have one down at the Cost Plus Plaza down the street. So they're sprinkled all around Marin County and beyond. We also have an electric vehicle charging program that's really focused on workplace charging. We've partnered with a lot of our municipal members to help get EV charging in place at their facilities. But we also have a program for workplaces. So if you're aware of any commercial customers that would like to have charging at their workplace, they can reach out to us, and we have some incentives. We also have an electric vehicle subsidy program for low-income customers that might want to buy a new or used EV. So you can reach out to us on that as well. Lots of information online, or you can talk to me on my way out. Also, we have an energy efficiency program that we've been operating since 2012 and is expanding tenfold this year because it's been very successful. We mainly focus on energy efficiency measures that haven't been touched by PG&E, so we try and complement their efforts. We do a lot around affordable housing. We also have a commercial and residential energy efficiency programs, and we're doing a lot to help low-income customers get solar on their rooftop because that helps to keep their bill costs down. We recently, one of the topics I wanted to touch on here that's kind of timely is we recently approved a rate adjustment after about a year and a half of not changing rates. We did go through a rate change about a month ago that's resulted in a slight rate increase, but such that it is keeping our rates still below what customers would be paying with PG&E. Also, of course, our product is 60% renewable at a minimum. PG&E's is about 33% renewable today. So we think that's a real value, and we work very hard to keep our prices affordable. As a local government agency, we don't have to pay shareholder profits, and that allows us to get more renewable energy into the mix while keeping prices really affordable. And I wanted to let folks know that we have an upcoming retreat on September 18th that is open to the public. All of our meetings are open to the public, just like our city council meetings are here. We encourage folks to go on the website and find out more about MCE. Come to one of our meetings, get involved, give us suggestions. That's what sparks a lot of the great local programs that we have in place. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Weiss? Kevin? No? Dan?
Just an expression of our appreciation for all your great work.
Thank you.
How do you manage a 28-member board?
Yeah, we have a fantastic board. And I will say, you know, my background is in local government agencies, and I've noticed that it is a lot harder to make decisions between education and filling potholes, for example. And there's a lot of really difficult decisions that come to cities and towns in Marin and beyond. I think that with MCE, we were fortunate to have a lot of alignment around the goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, keeping rates affordable, and getting more energy efficiency in place, and getting more local renewables on the grid. No one really argues about that. So we're able to go out and find the best products, bring them to the board, and we have a fantastic board that really digs in and works very well together. So it actually goes very smoothly, and we're fortunate to have such a great board.
Thank you.
Catherine, Kevin?
Just briefly, I just want to say thank you, Dawn, for coming tonight, taking the time to make that presentation. explain to the public a little bit about what MCE does. As you mentioned, I've had the honor and privilege of representing this community on MCE's board now for a number of years and providing some additional assistance to committees in various capacities on MCE. It's been a great privilege for me to represent our community, and I wanted to take this opportunity not only to thank you, but to thank this council for giving me the opportunity to represent our community's interests in what I think is a fundamentally dynamic, exciting enterprise that we're all part of.
I'm going to take you back 11 years from when I was on the formation committee. At that time, you had that power charge and difference adjustment. And we had always thought that that would last for about 5 years. And understanding a little bit about forward sale of commodities, it made sense at the time. But we're still paying it. So is there some way you can summarize, like in a paragraph or two, where you're at with that and
Sure.
how that affects, ratepayers?
Sure. So the power charge and difference adjustment, lovingly referred to as the PCIA, is a charge that is intended to make PG&E whole for the power they purchased on a customer's behalf before they depart. And so when power prices are high in a given year, that delta is actually lower because you can sell off that extra power at a profit. But when power prices are low, you end up taking a bit of a loss. And all departing customers have to pay the cost of that PCIA. We have seen the PCIA go up in recent years, and that's because the cost of power has been low. We're now starting to see the opposite happen, where power costs are starting to go up and the PCIA is starting to drop down a bit. There was a lengthy proceeding at the California Public Utilities Commission over the last year to re-examine the PCIA and make sure that it was fair. We were pushing very hard for that, for more transparency. And what we learned is that many of PG&E's power supply contracts are lengthy, and the PCIA will continue to be charged proportionate to those contracts. So it will diminish over time, but the charge won't completely go away for over 20 years. The good news is that in Larkspur, because Larkspur was an early adopter, there were many customers that departed PG&E service back in 2010. And so they've already gone through 9 years of that PCIA, and so their PCIA has diminished a lot more than the newer customers. And we're working very hard at the CPUC to make sure that those charges are fair. We're also negotiating with PG&E in hopes that we may be able to buy out that PCIA and stabilize the cost overall. The good news is that we've been able to keep our costs low while accounting for that PCIA. So when I tell customers that they're paying, 0.1% or 0.3% less than PG&E, that's after they've already paid that PCIA. So there's still a net savings. And we've been able to achieve that savings for customers most of the time. We don't promise to always be lower, but we usually are. We've also obtained a credit rating, which allows us to buy power at even more affordable rates, and that helps us to keep costs low as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Dawn? All right, thank you. Good to see you again. Appreciate
Likewise.
you coming in tonight.
My pleasure.
Okay, next item on our agenda is just our consent calendar. There's only one item, and it's our warrants. Does anyone on the council or in the audience like to pull that for further discussion? If not, I'll take a motion for approval on that.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion. Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Okay, I've lost my page again. Thank you. Okay, so this is the time when the city manager can make his oral report. Turned over to Dan Swartz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I have 3 items I want to highlight for you in the community this evening. The first is to make folks who are interested in the soon-to-arrive SMART station and SMART train that you're going to be seeing some activity here shortly. SMART will begin this Friday at night doing testing of the runs from San Rafael to Larkspur. They're going to be posting more information about this on their website, but they will be essentially later into the evening and well through the night, they're going to be running trains back and forth between San Rafael and Larkspur to make sure everything's working correctly. By federal law, there are times they'll have to blow the horns, but most of that's actually in San Rafael. So we won't have to bear too much of that impact. But this is a good sign that they are on track. Sorry, pun. To be open for business at the end of the year as they've targeted. So we encourage folks who are interested in that to monitor the SMART website. Once SMART has posted information about the testing in greater detail, we'll put a link up on our website. They have put out some press releases, so they're starting to get the word out about this. Second, and I think you have this on the dais, folks may not realize that there's a nonprofit that does the television for us. We stream live on the internet, and then this meeting's recorded and played on the government channel for those who have access to the local government channel. And that entity is the Community Media Center of Marin, and they're going to have an open house with a block party on Sunday, September 8th from 3 to 5 at their offices in San Rafael. So we encourage anybody who's interested, they can go to marintv.org. And I really encourage folks to check this out. There's actually a lot of resources at the Media Center that are available for a modest fee to the public. So folks who aren't familiar with that may want to do a little research. And it's a great opportunity to have a little fun while you do that. And then lastly, I want to reiterate what I said in response to the Vice Mayor's questions during public comment. We'll be issuing a public notice in the next day or two for your September 4th meeting. The notice will be that you'll be taking up first readings on 3 ordinances that you directed us to bring back to you. These are the renter protection issues that we told you had been fairly well vetted in neighboring communities, and we thought we could turn around relatively quickly. So one is a rental registry. The other is rental housing dispute resolution. And lastly, the third one is just cause evictions. A reminder to the council, those are in the broad umbrella of renter protections and not specifically about mobile home parks, although when applicable under state law, these ordinances would affect those folks as well. Those broader topics that you heard about in the public comment, we're not prepared to assign a date at this time to when they would be coming to you. With that, I turn it back to you.
Okay, anyone have any questions for City Manager? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to allow our council members a chance to comment or report on anything that they're working on. Nothing? Kevin? Fire?
I do.
Good.
Hi. Since last we met, the council, we have had two meetings that I'd like to report out to you about. First is the Central Marin Fire had our quarterly meeting, and that was second week in August. And we also on that same day had the Central Marin Police Authority board meeting. Did you want to report on that, or
No, you can. You're the chair.
So just an update on that. We do have a Central Marin Fire Authority and a board now since March, and I chair that board. It's a combination of Corte Madera and Larkspur since we merged our fire departments this year. And we meet quarterly. It's open to the public at the Central Marin Police Authority building. And we met this time 2 weeks ago and got a really good update from Ruben Martin, who is our fire marshal, regarding the implementation of our vegetation management plan. Many of you may have received in the mail, if you live in the urban wildland interface, the inspection plan that started in June, and we got an update about that, and that was very helpful to the rest of the committee. We also did a lot of financial updates as far as pension funding a pension plan for this new Central Marin Fire Authority, and we also approved a pay schedule. So that's available online. And we also responded to the grand jury report that came out. Second, after that meeting was the Central Marin Police Authority meeting, which I attended with Vice Mayor Chu as Ann Morrison's alternate, and that was also pretty much about salaries and an amendment approval for Chief Norton's salary. The second committee, since I've been here this month, is I represent Larkspur at the Marin Ready Together Committee, which is looking at a wildfire prevention and vegetation initiative for the county. You may have seen it in the newspaper recently, which is looking at a parcel tax to go on the March ballot that will support vegetation management across the entire county. There's a lot happening with that, and you should be getting a lot more information because the members who are rolling this out will be attending every city council in the next month to 2 months to get city council's approvals of this initiative. And it should be, you'll be seeing a lot more about this as they talk about creating this countywide JPA. Lastly, you know, I sit on the Marin Fire Safe Marin Council, and this will be it's a new publication that will be in everybody's mailbox in the next couple of weeks, which is a publication called Living with Fire in Marin County. And it will be mailed to all of the individuals' home addresses who live within our urban wildland interface, and also kept at fire stations. It's chock full of tremendous specific information about Marin County and how to prepare your home and your family for living with fire. I encourage everyone to try to pick this up. It's not a generic thing. It's really right about what we need to do in Marin County. And it's full of lots of helpful information. So look for that in the mail. If you live in the urban wildland interface, which most of Marin County is, half of or 3/4 of Larkspur Greenbrae is. So, and that's all.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing to report out on since I attended the same meeting, so we'll just move on to the remaining business items that we have. There are no public hearings tonight. So the first of our business items tonight is preferential parking districts to the neighborhoods, around Redwood High School. And we will have our city manager, Shannon, who's going to report out on this.
The parking item's mine.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah. As the council will recall, last year we had some lengthy discussions about the growing challenge, particularly at that time in the Larkspur Marina neighborhood, of the presence of students using on-street parking because they couldn't or did not want to park at the Redwood High campus. We had some fairly robust discussions about the impact this was causing on residents, particularly with respect in the Marina neighborhood to concerns about reckless driving and the impacts to the neighborhood that loitering and littering were causing by the students. The council, at the conclusion of all of those debates, said that they would like to put a program in place that would allow the council to, in the future, adopt preferential parking districts, districts that allow parking only by permit during restricted periods. At the time, you set some general parameters that you'd like there to be a fee assigned to that program so that there was both a cost recovery element to the program and also to recognize that you were making a decision to restrict the public's access to what is a public good. Now, with that preface, we fast forward a year, and a combination of things occurred. One is that Redwood High instituted a new set of policies to try to curb some of the concerns of the community with respect to behaviors of its student drivers. Most notably, they were trying to put an end to the practice of kids jumping into their car at lunch, trying to drive somewhere to pick up a meal and then race back to campus, which had been cited by many members of Larkspur and Corte Madera as a significant public safety concern. In addition, I think our efforts to educate the student population and to educate the general public about the impacts in the Marina neighborhood resulted in the kids looking for other places to park. In Larkspur, that meant Heather Gardens, particularly on William Avenue. In Corte Madera, for the first time, they saw a significant rise in the number of students parking in Madera Gardens, particularly along Birch. And as a side note, a little piece of Birch is in Larkspur. It's a very, for those who are around, there's sort of a strange history there, but I'll leave that for another day's discussion. So noticing this uptick in students parking and the same sort of problems, dangerous driving conditions, loitering and littering, also compounded by, particularly on Birch, we were noticing when we went out to look at it, that many cars parked on that street were causing issues with sight lines for drivers when they were trying to back out of driveways, for example, or when individuals were trying to traverse across the street, making sure that they were being seen by folks. And anybody who's driven that corridor when it's really heavily parked will understand what I'm talking about. And so I started having meetings with my counterpart in Corte Madera, Todd Cusimano. We also started having some more meetings with representatives of Redwood High School and the TAM Union High School District to try to come up with some solutions. Ultimately, it was our conclusion that we were going to need to restrict the students' access to parking on our streets. We were going to need to do that in order to push them back onto the campus. As I've outlined in the staff report, our hope is that that will create a different definition of the problem for the school district and the school that might result in ultimately some sort of solution there, because in the absence of that, I think this behavior is just going to ebb and flow, but it's going to continue. We discussed how we should structure the program, and while I took to heart your direction that I had advocated to some degree for about assigning a fee for this program, it was our conclusion that for both our communities at this time, in this specific instance, around the high school, the imperative is to deter the problem. And that to deter the problem, we need to get the participation of all the residents. And to that end, we're recommending doing a pilot program over the next year where we won't charge for the program. And we'll allow any registered vehicle within the designated areas to have a permit. And that we would restrict the parking when school's in session during school hours. And we're hoping that that will deter this behavior. There is, of course, the caveat that this may send the problem somewhere else, something we talked about last year. So in addition to the fact that we'll be needing to administer and monitor how effective this is in the Marina neighborhood, in Heather Gardens, in Madera Gardens, we'll also have to be monitoring if all we've done is extend the problem somewhere else. Now, we're hopeful that the districts we're proposing tonight and the one that Corte Madera dealt with on their side in Madera Gardens are sufficiently large enough that we won't see some of the behaviors we're most concerned about from the students, because we are putting it where they'd have to be pretty far from campus if they were to try to do on-street parking. To that end, we have up on the screen and in your packet diagrams to show you the streets that we're talking about. This is the Larkspur Marina neighborhood. The entire neighborhood would be part of the parking district. So we would have all the streets be restricted when school's in session to people with parking permits. This is the diagram in your packet of Heather Gardens. And there we have generally picked up most of the neighborhood. We didn't go into the Meadowood part of the area, and we didn't go all the way down William. And that's twofold. One is when you read in the code about how you would do a parking district, going past the point on William that we've identified could create some challenges for us structurally in how we would administer the program and create signage. The second issue is William is a bit tricky policy-wise in the sense that it's not entirely the student population that's out there parking. There are a lot of folks who park there to use our recreational trail. And there's a lot of folks that park there who are visiting or working in the neighborhood temporarily. So we did leave some parking farther back on Williams so we could see if that would at least accommodate folks who are making temporary visits to use the recreation trail. That's something we'll have to monitor really closely. But the district as we define it, we feel both from our understanding at a city level of what Public Works and Administration want to do, and also from what Chief Norton's telling us at CMPA, we think that particular designation is where it should be for the pilot program, and then we'll continue to monitor it. Staff conducted jointly with Corte Madera some outreach meetings about the issue and what we were thinking we would do. We've also pushed out information about this program into the neighborhoods by doing, using Nextdoor and other means of circulating information. So far, I would say feedback's generally been positive that we're trying to address the problem. Some residents are concerned about the logistics of the program, but generally I haven't heard anybody say absolutely don't do that. But maybe we'll hear some of that tonight, I'm not sure. With that, I'm available for questions, and if it's about the installation of signage or anything like that, I'll probably look over to Mr. Julian Skinner to give you some of the answers to that.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions for the city manager?
I do.
Okay, Catherine?
Oh, are we having technical difficulties? Okay. So just so that I can be clear on this, I know the backstory for what we've gone through with all of this. We're looking at now a 1-year trial period starting what date? I didn't see that in here.
We didn't give a date. We're
Okay.
asking you to authorize me to launch the program.
Okay.
That's because we can't be certain if to a day when we're going to launch the program. We still have
Okay.
to put the signs up. We have the order ready to press go for the permits themselves and that sort of thing. So it's just, at this point, it's logistical.
Okay.
We will miss the start of school.
So 1-year trial period in 2 Larkspur neighborhoods, simultaneously 1 Corte Madera neighborhood.
Correct.
For no charge during this first year for a permit, but with the understanding that after the 1-year trial period, we may be looking at $50 per permit.
We're going to come back to you and report what it actually cost us
Okay.
to run the program. I didn't mention in my oral report, it's in the written report, we leveraged former Chief Cusimano's background, and he had some creative ideas, and Chief Norton contributed some additional ideas on ways we could reduce the cost from the way we were thinking about it in the past.
And I'm recalling this discussion of last year. Correct me if I'm wrong, we talked about having 75% of the residents within a designated neighborhood sign a petition or agree to do this. Have we done that part, or did we just...
We didn't do that. We're asking you to authorize me to implement it regardless of the petition process. We think that some of the greater concerns now necessitate implementation. If I were to see substantial protest in the neighborhoods, then I would have the executive authority to not implement, but I feel very confident it's going to be implemented in Madera Gardens.
Okay.
I feel very confident the Marina neighborhood, given their past messaging and my interactions over the last week or two with their president by email, will implement. My message would be to Heather Gardens residents, if you don't implement, you're ground zero.
Right.
For where their kids are going to go.
So then each resident can bring, because we talked about 2 permits or 3, if I remember in the past. I didn't see, maybe I missed it in here. Are we limiting each household to a certain number of permits in this trial 1-year period?
We are not going to
Okay.
limit. We're going to monitor how much demand we actually get for visitor permits. The other thing is we know periodically we're accidentally going to ticket somebody who wasn't a student who pulled up to...
Right.
Well, I'll pick on Councilmember Hilmer. He lives
His
in Heather
neighborhood,
Gardens.
yeah.
And somebody may just drive up and think they've got 20 minutes in and out of his house. And we'll have a procedure for folks to appeal the ticket and say, here's what happened. I wasn't a student. Here's how I got There'll be an appeal process that's outlined in the program. So,
And then the last question is, the resident would go to CMPA to get the permit or to,
no, one of the ways we're bringing that cost down is reducing the sworn officer component of it.
Okay.
So City Hall and Town Hall will issue the permits.
all right. Okay, thank you for that.
Kevin, any questions?
Just to get a clarification, I'm still a little confused about how the visitor process is going to work, particularly when it comes to service vehicles, folks sort of coming to homes for maintenance and are going to be there all day long, and maybe they're over a couple of day period of time. How's that going to work?
So whether they know it or not, service providers who provide service in both Corte Madera and Larkspur are required by the municipal codes to have a business license. I can't guarantee they all do. But one of the things that we're adding in the program is if they have it and they put it on display, they can park. That'll be considered a parking permit. Essentially, we're creating a system where they ought to do what they ought to be doing anyway, which is get a business license, and then just put that on display.
Do we have any sense of how many folks are actually in compliance with the law relative to?
I couldn't tell you, but they get a warning from us and are told that's how you can avoid getting an actual ticket. Then I would hope that they would come down and get a business license.
It shouldn't be that big of a deal to come down and get a business license.
Well, again, they're required by law to have a business license. So if they are providing services to a Larkspur home without a business license, they're actually violating the law.
Got it. Right.
So I don't feel uncomfortable with that provision because that's what the law says. So,
and I understand that. I'm trying to think more as like a practical matter about how many
I understand.
folks are going to be doing it and whether there's going to be issues and disputes, and I can see that happening.
One of the things that's different in this pilot year program is the two town managers are essentially going to serve as the administrative and adjudicant officers. So we'll have the ability to directly interact with these folks and talk them through what they need to do to ensure compliance. And in terms of visitors that are just generally coming, the idea is that we'll have sort of hanging placards that we'll put dates on that say, a resident of Heather Gardens came down and let us know they have a visitor for 3 days. Here's a 3-day placard. We'll do that sort of approach.
Just as a personal aside, I mean, this all sounds great in concept, and I think as a practical matter, should work. I know family members who have this kind of a permitting system in the areas where they live, and it works. There'll probably be some hiccups in this first year, but we'll figure that out.
Well, I want to emphasize too, and I want to thank Mr. Cusimano because he really thought this through. Shifting a lot of this into the administrative part of our way we enforce our codes gives us the ability to adjudicate it differently than were we to just issue tickets and they get sent off to a court. So I think in the first year during the pilot program, there's going to be a lot of education of both the residents and the students. And so it puts me and my staff, it puts Todd Cusimano and his staff in a position to do that. And again, I tried to sort of suggest this to some degree in this report and just want to put out there, this is about deterring what we now view as a problem that we need to deter. It's not intended to be punitive toward people parking in the neighborhood. It's not intended to generate a lot of fees or fines. That's not our goal. Our goal is to put a stop to a behavior. Unfortunately, those fines ultimately have to be the stick that is part of that deterrence.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do I handle an unannounced or an unforeseen visit from someone outside the community to my house in the middle of the day?
Well, hopefully, if you can't offer them off-street parking or give us a call so we can make note of that and then arrange for a permit that you could come pick up. Should something happen and they get a ticket, you give us a call and you say this is what happened, how do I appeal the parking ticket? And can I also now arrange for a permit for my visitor? They're staying for a couple days.
Thanks.
Will the school have the same opportunity with their guests? Is it something where you can just print an email or, print it to a PDF and maybe email it to someone?
There's nothing that would prohibit your executive officers from issuing permits that they felt were appropriate within the parking districts. I know that one of the interests you had as a council was you were hearing from folks who need to visit Redwood High School on a professional level that there are days when there's no parking on the campus for them, and they're there to serve the students by giving a presentation, or they're there for a PTA meeting or some other function. We can work with the school to accommodate that behavior. That's not the behavior we're trying to deter. We're not trying to have a program here that says we don't want people parking on public streets when they're being orderly, lawful citizens. We're trying to send a message to some of our younger members of our community and our greater community that they're not meeting that bar. And unfortunately, we now need to have this program because they're not meeting that bar. And I'm painting a broad brush, and we talked about that last year. We have kids who are parking in these neighborhoods that are good citizens, but we have enough that are not doing it. And then we have the added now issue of sightline concerns that we need to deter this behavior.
And I saw in the staff report you will not be issuing citations for the first offense, so I guess you have an easy way of tracking second offenders.
That's right. So we'll be keeping a database, so we'll know who we issued a citation to. And that was a really important component of the program because our goal, again, is educating, deterring. It's not all about racking up fines. So we wanted everybody to have one opportunity to hear, you can't do this anymore. And so even in the worst case scenario where Mr. Hilmer has a visitor, that first citation's a warning anyway. So even if you forget to call us and work it out, there's not a fine attached with that first time offense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for the city manager? Okay, at this point, I'll open it up to general audience and members of the public. If they'd like to ask questions or comment to the council, please step up to the podium. Hi, good evening. We'll just need your name and community that you live in.
Are you hearing me? I'm not hearing me at all. Are you?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. My name is Ann Zuki. I live on Riviera Circle, just a few houses in from Redwood High School. And from time to time, I have several visitors coming to my house at a time. For instance, a little French group. But they cannot all park in my driveway. Will there be a way for me to have one of these permits that they can put on their car while they're there, or are these permits going to be time, date, person specific?
Okay.
We hadn't envisioned the scenario that you're describing, but we can meet and talk about a way to solve your situation.
That would be a very good idea because we in the neighborhood do have situations like that.
So part of the issue is we'll have to make sure there's some level of time control, and you may periodically need to renew, because I don't want to have a bunch of visitor permits floating around and create a black market for the students. I'm not saying you would do that, but
I understand
that's
I understand what you're saying. Treasure them. Thank you.
Thank you.
But on that note, it sounds like it's not going to be a decal that goes on a bumper like they do in residential parking in San Francisco or something at this point.
What we're proposing for the cars, the vehicles that are registered to the houses, is they're going to get a window sticker.
Okay.
The visitors are a different issue, and we're thinking more along the lines of placard or something you'd lay on your dashboard.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Jennifer Lancio. I live in the neighborhood you were talking about, the cul-de-sac on Birch.
On Birch?
Which is in Larkspur. A few questions. If we are simply trying to deter school parking, wouldn't it make sense to have a parking that is, say, 3 hour, so that you don't have to worry about the occasional visitor who might stay for several hours, like a book club or a French club or what have you? But if you're going to park there for school, you're going to be there for more than 3 hours. It's just a thought that if there was an actual time limit, then we wouldn't have to be calling the city if we have an unexpected guest, which to me seems onerous. But the other question I had is, I didn't see my neighborhood here on the map, but I assume it is an extension of the Madeira Gardens.
So you have two questions. You have more, or do you want me to?
Let's start with that.
Okay. The reason we don't propose a shorter than school time is that we actually do have evidence that the students, if we were to say do 3 hours, there are students that we suspect will run to their cars and move their cars. One of the behaviors we're concerned about that may not be affecting your cul-de-sac is, sorry, students. We have a lot of evidence that the students that are parking in our neighborhoods at lunchtime are driving off, getting lunch and racing back.
Absolutely, I see it.
And that will happen in a 3-hour window. It also creates a budgetary problem for us, to be frank. We would have to then be out there more frequently to monitor the 3 hours.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, specific to your cul-de-sac, your street's actually a private street. So we intend to do some signage to help you out. And I've had some communication with a couple of your residents about some ways that we can essentially extend the program into your private street. But it's a little different, and that's why you're not up there, because the council can't formally adopt this program for a private street. So we will be collaborating with you so that the deterrence occurs. It's just a little different.
It'll be a little different.
Your cul-de-sac, yeah.
Okay.
It actually shows up in the Corte Madera staff report.
Yeah, Todd, I'm really having trouble with this mic tonight. Todd Cusmano suggested he should show it there because he's going to be the one putting signage up in Corte Madera to help them. It'll actually be, because we can't actually put a public sign on a private street, so the signage will be right at the city limits in Corte Madera. We're going to work with them on that.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask who you've been speaking with?
Steve Stein, and I have to check who the other, I apologize. There were two people I had some email exchanges with maybe 4 months ago. So.
Several of us on that one street.
Michael Blum, 207 Birch Avenue. So I'd like to express my gratitude to the council and to Todd for taking this on. It sounds like you guys have been going through this for a little while, but I think it's important for the record to stress the safety concern that is really driving this. The residents on Birch don't want this. We would prefer not to have this, but we unanimously feel that the safety issue has gotten completely out of hand. The sight lines, as they were addressed, are not only a problem for the kids driving in, we can't see getting around the corners, and we can't see crossing our street. The hazardous driving is not an exaggeration. It would not be hyperbolic to say there is going to be a serious accident. So we're completely supportive. I want to thank you. The only suggestion I would make is a variant of what was just stated is it is going to be an inconvenience for guests and visitors and others. It might make sense to consider making it not a time limit, but the time of the day limit that would obstruct the behavior that we're trying to prevent. That would be during school hours, but be a much shorter period, so it wouldn't affect much of the other activity. So if you said, for example, you can't park here unless you have a permit between, say, 9:30 or 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock, you capture all the lunch problem, you can't park there in the morning, but you take a good 4 hours off of the impact on everyone else living around there. So I would, really request that you consider a modification of the specific time, narrowing the window, taking the burden off the community while still achieving the desired behavior modification. So again, thank you very much for dealing with this issue. We were all very concerned that we were going to have a disaster down there shortly.
Thank you. Just for clarification, is 9 to 3 currently proposed? 7 to 3. Okay, thank you.
Anecdotally, I have to say I was really surprised on a couple of my visits that the problem had gone up to their cul-de-sac. That's not a convenient walk. It really tells you how many students are parking on street. But it was evident one of the days I was out there that there were students parking all the way up in the cul-de-sac, which is, from my opinion, as a kid, would have been a bit of a trek, but they'll do what they need to do.
But the access from that location to where they want to go is better, actually, than from Larkspur side.
Oops.
Oh, Kevin, go ahead.
I just wanted to, as a follow-on to the last public comment, just as a reminder to everyone, we're talking about a pilot project here during this initial year, and I'm confident that issues of the sort that were raised by the last speaker will be highlighted to the extent that they become something that needs to be addressed as a result of our pilot program. We'll have an opportunity to revise later on.
Everything in this program is subject to be changed as we learn together as a community what works for us.
Can I just ask one? Yeah. Can I ask you one procedural question with all due respect to Councilmember Hilmer? Is this something that a resident, a council member who lives within this residency has to recuse themselves from a vote on? I just wondering procedurally, because I probably should have asked that before, but I know we have the 500-foot rule and.
Well, I'm going to say that there's no requirement under California law for recusal because this is not something that's addressing property directly. So even though they're within the district, the proposed district, there's no effect on property that would have a financial effect, like that would affect their personal financial interests. So I don't think it's something that the Political Reform Act would look at. I think, what I would say is that it would, for anybody who lives within the district or nearby the district, just reflecting before the vote that they're basing their decision on the record in front of them and making a decision based on that information would be helpful.
That's helpful for me because this will happen in other neighborhoods too. So, I mean, this is just our first test neighborhood, but if this goes to other neighborhoods, maybe where Larry lives or I live, I just want to make sure we're consistent with our application of the vote.
Yeah, I think disclosing that, I think we've already had on the record that Councilmember Hilmer is within the district, and I think just a reflection on his part before any vote that he's basing his decision on the evidence that's in front of him tonight would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. My name's John Hoffman. I live on William Avenue with my wife. I have a letter I'd like to submit, if I may.
Yeah, you can give it to the city clerk and she'll give it to us.
My principal suggestion is like one of the earlier speakers. I think you could substantially achieve the goals that you're seeking with a 2-hour parking district. And that would eliminate a lot of the concerns about visitor permits because many short-term visits would fall within that 2-hour period and there would not be a need to get a permit for that. So I would urge you strongly to consider some sort of time-limited thing, and that 2 hours is the one I came up with, and I do not think that very many of the students in a 2-hour period are going to be going back and forth moving their cars.
So I should elaborate on why it's so expensive for us to do that. We'd actually need to then go chalk all the cars in the neighborhood, and then we'd have to go back constantly. We basically would be doing round-the-clock enforcement because you got to chalk a car, then you got to make note of where that car was and at what time, and then you have to return in 2 hours and see if that car is still there. So if that's an option the council wants to pursue, we need to have a different conversation because we probably have to hire somebody to do that.
There are other 2-hour districts within the city, so how is that handled?
So actually there's only a handful of places in this city that have 2-hour parking, and we do chalk cars in those neighborhoods, but we currently are at capacity with our staff for doing that, and we pay a premium for that. So if we want to do that here, I just would need to bring back a different type of budgetary report to the council if they want to incur that cost in these neighborhoods.
The other suggestion I have that I would like to urge is that you have a reasonable, easy-to-use visitor program if you follow the proposal as it's currently drafted. Because, I mean, here's just a short list of the kind of people that would visit our home or probably nearly anyone else within the district. Other immediate family members, we have a daughter, we have a son, they visit. My daughter visits for longer periods of time because she lives in Santa Barbara. If we go away for a while, my son and his family who live in the city would no doubt come and live in our house for a while because it's a nice break for them. But in addition to that, you have other relatives, you have friends, you have other social visitors, you have tradespeople, including cleaning people, yard workers, and other delivery personnel, all of those. And if you don't have an easy, efficient permit program, it's the resident who's going to have to go get the permit because you're really not going to be able to tell somebody else, go down in City Hall, particularly a family member or a relative, go down to City Hall and get a permit before you come here. So I would urge those things. They're outlined at a little greater length in my letter, but I would ask you to consider those before proceeding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Is that better?
Yeah.
Mark Watrous, 205 Birch Avenue, so the cul-de-sac that was previously mentioned. I want to thank you all for addressing this with the seriousness that you have. This is truly a problem. I did want to come back to understanding the nature of the private road. Our understanding is it's a privately maintained public road, and in the past we have asked if we could put a gate in, and we were told because it's a public road, we are not able to do so. So I'm trying to understand the distinction between what can and can't be done for a private road and what options we would have to enforce what will absolutely be a problem for us if we don't put something in place. I've already been approached by a number of families who have heard about this that have offered to pay me to get permits to park in our neighborhood, and if I have nothing, they will just park in our neighborhood.
So the way your road was dedicated to the city, it's required to be publicly accessible, but it's a privately maintained and held road. So the way that a city collaborates with the owners of that road to create regulations within that road has to be a little different because the enforcement will be a little bit different. It's a pretty big topic for me to spend a lot of time elaborating. I'd be happy to meet with you folks offline. I actually think it might be mutually beneficial to have that conversation together offline on how we would do it.
Okay, because it's very clear you have unanimous support from our entire homeowners association that we will do everything necessary to avoid this problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Scott Candell, 71 Via Chaparro. I don't live in this area. I am here on a different topic. However, after hearing this, I just wanted to add a suggestion. It sounds like the biggest potential issue is the hassle to the residents of the wrong people being ticketed, either their guests, their family, something like that. Then they have to appeal the ticket. They have to go down to City Hall and try to fix this mistake. If there is some way to streamline, you have a website perhaps, somebody gets a citation that they shouldn't have gotten, they give it to the homeowner and they have some kind of password that as a homeowner you log in, you say, hey, this is Joe Smith, this is my address, here's my password, this citation was issued, it shouldn't have been issued, please rescind it. That way it will save all this hassle, and then if there are mistakes made, it would make the burden less for the residents of that neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, anyone else like to address the council on this matter? Okay, we'll take it back to council and we can start our discussion here. Who would like to start? No? Catherine, go ahead.
I guess I'll start. I think we've really contemplated this issue for a number of years now and had several meetings and several public hearings. and also had Corte Madera brought in with their public hearings, et cetera. And I think we're worked out a compromise at this time for a trial run to see how this works between our two towns, and hope to curb a lot of the behavior that the residents in these neighborhoods have been very concerned about and have been expressing. And I think that we've come up with the best option at this point, but I would really like to make sure we keep monitoring it to make sure that we're actually meeting our benchmarks and our accomplished goals, which are to curb the unsafe behaviors that are happening in our neighborhoods. So I think this, the way our staff has digested all the public comment and come up with this compromise, and this position is, I can support that.
Okay. Dan?
Is my assumption that we can continue to refine some of the practices here?
Yeah,
And look at some of the...
Item 11 on the Exhibit B gives a lot of discretion to me and the police chief to modify the program, and I think the visitor permit issue is the one we'll most readily take to heart and try to sort out some options. And you approving this tonight doesn't prohibit me from modifying that aspect of the program. The time window we would want to bring back to you, because it really should be this body, because that's more of a restriction that should be done at the legislative level. My understanding is this is the time constraint Corte Madera passed. So for now, my suggestion is you pass this. I will take those comments, meet with my counterparts in Corte Madera and share them and see what they heard during their meetings. And if we need to come back, we can come back.
I guess specific to the time question, it doesn't really buy anything for a student if they parked at 7 o'clock, but they were prohibited until like early afternoon. So if you made it 9 o'clock, are students really going to park there for 2 hours, but it gives an additional opportunity for residents to have a shorter time window?
I can only tell you that on William, it's clear to me kids are parking there pretty early in the morning.
Yeah,
So
but they would have to move their car by 9.
Well, no, the clock would start on them at 9 o'clock if you were to push the time back, right?
Well, what I'm thinking is that, I don't know, if the time restriction were from 9 to say
Oh, I see what you're
1:30,
saying.
then they would have to move the car by 9 anyway.
I'd want to meet with the Redwood folks. I understand what you're saying now, and that might be true. I'd want to meet with them and ask. I've been out of high school a while, and I've actually been shocked each time I meet with the Redwood folks about learning about how frequently students can leave the campus all throughout the day has been actually pretty startling to me. So I would really want to talk to them about it, but I get the logic of what you're saying.
Mhm.
And you're right, probably if we push that morning time back, it might be helpful.
Yeah, okay. All I'm thinking about is anything we can do to minimize the impact on how long the period of time when someone needs a permit when they're not students. Okay, Kevin, did you?
I think to go to Mr. Candel's comments, though, I suspect the easiest solution is probably to just create some very simple ways for residents to call us or contact us and say, you guys did your sweep today and you caught my daughter in the sweep and she was here visiting.
Mhm.
And we just need to think about a way that's easy for folks to communicate that. And I think that's probably the best solution, in part because one of the reasons we did set the 7 to 3 was we really wanted to capture the whole school day, because one of the messages we got looking around is the easiest message to send to students is, if school's in, you should not be parking in the neighborhoods. And the 7 to 3 captures all of that for kids who go to school really early. That's what we were told is
Yeah,
part
there's
of the
a 0
7 a.m.
period.
Yeah, there is a 0 period. So, but take it to heart. We'll take a look at that, see if it could be pushed back and if that would have any effect.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
Thanks, and I think this is a good strategy, and I think it's appropriate to have the city manager be vested with a certain amount of discretion in terms of making adjustments and changes at an administrative level as we get into the implementation of this program. As a council, I don't think it's really a good use of our time and energy to get into the details of how things will be working out on a day-to-day basis as this program gets rolled out. But also, as you've suggested, there could be, depending upon what answers we come up with in terms of some of these issues, there could be budgetary implications for the council if we do something that's dramatic. So I'm very mindful of the fact that there's a cost associated to the city with this program. I understand the rationale for not having a fee attached to the implementation during the first year of the pilot program. That's fine. But I do think there are going to be costs. My guess is it's going to be more costly rather than less costly in terms of enforcement. But we'll see. And I appreciate this. There's a lot of moving parts in terms of the administration of an ordinance like this, because we're not just dealing with the city of Larkspur, we're dealing with the school district, we're dealing with our sister city, Corte Madera, we're dealing with neighborhoods and homeowners associations, and everybody's input is going to be important as this thing gets implemented during the course of the first year, and we make adjustments once the pilot program is concluded. So with those comments, I'm completely in favor with the adoption of the resolution as proposed by the staff, and I'd be happy to make a motion.
Okay, I think, oh, go ahead.
I'm sure you're going to figure out a way to make it impossible to create counterfeit decals.
I don't know if we have the technology to match the U.S. Mint, but we'll try to figure something.
I'm pretty sure high school kids have the technology.
They have the technology to make a 3D replication of their car if they need to. So,
Mr. Cusimano is a former police chief. It was his language I picked up that says things will get rather punitive if you violate the program. So I think he may have already thought of this particular issue based on past conversations. But again, and I didn't say this tonight, folks who've heard some of this debate before, the number one entity for policing this program is going to be the residents. I think most of the time it gets enforced will actually be residents calling saying, there's some students who are parking there. And if they're parking there with a forged permit, I'm guessing it'll be residents that'll draw our attention to that eventually.
Okay, thank you. I think just as my general comment, we're going to try and start this on a pilot program, and I think, like anything else, there always seems to be a three-legged stool we're trying to balance, and in this case, it's going to be the convenience to the residents, trying to solve the problem, and trying to keep the cost down to the city. So for me, I think, let's work with what's been proposed, since this is a two-community collaboration, and, we'll leave it to the expertise of the managers, especially when one is a former police chief, to be able to solve this problem for us. And, they'll take feedback. Hopefully they'll be able to respond to it immediately and adjust it, as appropriate, even if it means coming back to the council for additional guidance. So you've heard from our council that, we do have at least one member who is willing to make a motion on resolution 5119. So
with your permission, I'd like to move adoption of resolution 5119, resolution of the City Council of the City of Larkspur creating a preferential parking permit zone for the neighborhoods specified in the resolution.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, that resolution passes unanimously. For those who came in for this item, thank you for your comments, and cross our fingers and hope it works out. Okay, next item on our agenda is a discussion about how we are going to handle the November election, since there are only two candidates for two positions. So that's a Shannon, presentation.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Chu and members of the City Council. My name's Shannon O'Hare. I'm the assistant to the city manager and the acting city clerk. Tonight I'm bringing forth an item that's asking you to pass a resolution to cancel the municipal election that would be held on November 5th, 2019, because only one person was nominated for each office to be elected, and appointing the nominated individuals to office. So on June 5th, 2019, the city of Larkspur called for an election for 2 council members to serve 5-year terms. The nomination period opened on July 15th and closed on Wednesday, August 14th. The 2 council members whose terms were up were Mayor Morrison and Vice Mayor Chu, and neither council member decided to seek re-election. So at the close of the nomination period, the following candidates were nominated for each city council member office to be filed. Scott Candell and Gabriel Paulson. I believe they are both in the chambers this evening. You want to wave and say hi? We reviewed the nomination papers. They were reviewed by city staff and by the county elections office, and they were deemed to be complete and sufficient. So in the event that only one person has been nominated for an office, the city council may opt to take one of the following actions authorized by the California Elections Code. 1 is to appoint to office the person who has been nominated, or 2 is to hold the election. You have to choose one or the other. If the council chooses the first option, the council should cancel the municipal election, and the city clerk shall not accept for filing any statements of writing candidacy that is submitted after these appointments are made. Alternatively, so under the scenario, rather, the appointed persons will qualify, take office, and serve exactly as if a municipal election was held. Alternatively, if you do nothing and you do not pass the resolution tonight, we will legally be required to have the election and go forward with the election in November. Council, when we announced that there were only one filer for each position, asked staff what the election would cost and what the possibilities would be and what any benefits would be if we were to hold the election. And primarily, it would be the benefit to not holding the election would be to save funds for holding the election. At the recommendation of the Marin County Elections Office, the city of Larkspur has budgeted $80,000 for fiscal year 1920 to cover the supplies, services, personnel costs associated with conducting an election. And the primary purpose to hold an election where one person has been nominated for each office would be to allow for the possibility of a write-in candidate or write-in candidates potentially winning office. I inquired with the County of Marin Elections Department regarding the frequency of write-in candidates winning elections, and the Elections Department informed me that there has been one instance of a write-in candidate in Marin County that he's aware of winning office, and that was actually in a recall election. It wasn't in a general election, and it was for school board. We don't have a database, and we didn't do extensive research, but it's exceedingly rare in a general election for a write-in candidate to win in terms of frequency. Also, during this time, in addition to legally noticing the election, staff believes that people also noticed that there was an election sufficiently. It was covered in the IJ. When the filing period opened, a number of folks pulled papers who ultimately decided not to file. We also got some soft inquiries about what it's like to serve for city council. So we feel that there was sufficient outreach, and we put and the community was aware that there would be an election. So anyone who was interested in running would likely have filed papers, and it would be unlikely that there would be a write-in candidate at all at this stage. And furthermore, staff feels that the cost savings to the community realized by canceling the election is greater than the benefit of potentially allowing for a write-in candidate to seek office. So that concludes my staff report. If there's any questions, we recommend that you pass the resolution tonight. If you don't pass the resolution, then we'll hold the election.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Shannon on this matter before I open it up to the public?
I'm ready for a motion when you are.
Oh, go
So
ahead.
Shannon, just to clarify, if we decide on option number 1, which is to appoint the 2 individuals to office, they don't then take their seat until the regular time, which is in December 15th, or what's the date?
Right. Excellent question. So they don't take, So Mayor Morrison and Vice Mayor Chu would serve the remainder of their term in the swearing in. So nothing would happen tonight aside from
Right.
us passing this, or the council passing this resolution, notifying the county that there won't be an election so that they don't start preparing for Larkspur's election. And then the swearing in ceremony in the beginning of the term and all of the things
Our-
that happen associated with that would happen at the same
Our
time.
general thing in December.
It would happen as if there would be an election at the same time. Doesn't change the timeline.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
No,
Not
I'm
yet.
not.
Not
Yeah.
yet.
Do we need
Okay, would any members of the audience like to make a comment or address the council on this matter? Even if a couple of you might have a conflict of interest. No, not really, just kidding. Okay. Well, we really appreciate, your willingness to step up and serve the community. So thank you also for doing that as well as being here tonight. Looks like Councilmember Hilmer.
Well, I'd still like to discuss a little.
Okay, all right, we'll bring it back.
What's that?
You want to have the election? Sure.
No, but I would like to consider an alternate idea.
It's either one or the other.
Well, that's why I'm bringing up a discussion for a council-initiated alternate suggestion. And my suggestion kind of comes from my own thoughts and ruminating about how, to me, the importance of our public process is, so that our community can know and understand who represents them in an elected role like this. Because we do have two new people who are not well known within the community as far as having had public offices before or served on a board or a commission. So I would like to bring up a suggestion, and I don't know whether it can go to the two candidates or that we should initiate it in a more formal way. But that is that we expect or would ask that the two candidates do meet and greets or something like that sometime over the next 3 months. And similar to what they would need to do or be hoped to do if they were to actually run for election in the formal process. So maybe, this is my idea, maybe a Chamber of Commerce meet and greet like we would do a debate. Maybe a meet and greet at the Tamalpais, which they usually do. And perhaps one in Greenbrae, since Greenbrae would be represented now with two council members from the Greenbrae area and have something there. I would also like us as a council and maybe as a city to encourage participation in the next 2 or 3 months in citywide functions so that people can get to know them. There's the Greenbrae Property Owners Association luncheon or picnic that's coming up on September 7th. There's various council meetings. There's various, for instance, I'll invite them to come to the Twin Cities Disaster Preparedness Committee and meet up with Corte Madera and Larkspur residents who are involved in those things. So I'm throwing that out there that we could make the opportunity to, if we decide on option one, to also allow Scott and Gabe to be to have the opportunity to meet neighbors and to meet residents within the community and present who they are and what their ideas are and what focuses they may be interested in having. Now, I don't think we can we formally ask that of the city to arrange those things? Or do we think that that would be a valuable part of our community conversation, is to have the community know and understand who our new council members are? I'm throwing that out there.
Yeah.
They're going to be appointed to the city council. We're either going to have an election or we're not going to have the election. That's the issue before us now. Now, how to best introduce them to the community, I think, is a separate conversation. If you're suggesting that we have, I heard the word debates.
No, I'm not making a contingent on doing these activities, but I think it would be highly encouraged by me to suggest that the council encourage the two candidates to do these, to participate in these things so that people can get to know them. I'm only suggesting the debate because we usually have a Chamber of Commerce sponsored debate, which is a public forum to have an opportunity for candidates to meet people within the community and talk about their ideas.
Well, I think that's great, but given that there's not going to be competition for these council seats, if we're going to talk about council issues, I want to be participating.
Okay.
I don't want even future council members isolated out there talking about stuff without the rest of the council participating.
So with that, how would you create a format so that we could all participate?
I think it would be great if we decided on the best way to have an introductory event to introduce the council members, give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, and certainly create the opportunity to talk about topics. But I wouldn't want to give the impression that they need to sell themselves in a...
But I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that that we do a hybrid opportunity for public process, because the public process to me in a democracy is so important that people understand who their elected representatives are. And I know we struggle with that very often to get participation within this community because a lot of people are very busy. But every opportunity I feel like we get to have all of us and all of the elected people stand before our representatives and have them know who we are as people and how we are philosophically is valuable.
Well, I think having open public council meetings is the best way to do that. And I agree. I think we need to create a way to have an optimal introduction for our new council members, and also have, as soon as possible, a council retreat, which is also a public open meeting, to where we talk about priorities, values, team building.
Okay.
Kevin?
I appreciate the sentiments expressed about the importance of new members of the council to be open and available to the public. I'm confident that these two gentlemen will do exactly that, so I'm not worried about it. I do worry about creating something that would give the impression that somehow our action tonight has a contingency attached to it that I don't think we would intend. So I would strongly encourage that this body, as it's currently comprised, follow the staff recommendation, and I certainly would, in doing so, approve adoption of the resolution as proposed, and express in that context appreciation to these two folks and to everybody else who raised their hands, got signatures, did everything that one does in order to set themselves up for this wonderful opportunity. So with that, whoever would like to make the motion, if no one else, I'll do it.
I think...
I heard a motion.
Yeah, I think at this point, I'm just going to make a couple comments here. You know, you had mentioned that the public would want an opportunity to meet the people that, you know, are going to be elected. And I think in many respects, the lack of participation is a statement in terms of what people believe is important. Okay. They're either thinking one or two things, is that this city is run well, or the city is run so bad that they can't possibly be bothered by it. You know, I tend to go to extremes, but I'd like to believe it's the former. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's a big commitment. You know, I think in large part because we haven't had we've had several uncontested elections in my time here, and the only time it's really been contested is when there was an open seat. Mm-hmm. You know, I think our surveys, when we do our bond measures, shows a high degree of confidence in what this council and our staff does. So I think we just have to trust the process, and part of that process is that our new candidates will also make themselves available between now and the time they take office if, you know, there's a way for them to introduce themselves, but, you know, on a less formal basis.
Okay.
Just wondering if the Vice Mayor would like to entertain a staff suggestion based on the conversation. Mm-hmm. Because there's another element that won't happen because there's not a contested election, which is during a contested election, the staff holds forums for the candidates to meet the staff and get all the contact info and have access to documents and resources. And in this situation, we'll reach out to your appointees, and then probably over the next few months, they'll be going through the process that new candidates and new council members go through of just absorbing a heck of a lot of information. A possible way to at least kind of hit all of the points you've made is perhaps turning the actual taking of office evening in December into an open house afterwards. And because I anticipate you'll all be at that meeting, so we could have that be an extended open house and invite the public to spend some time chatting with all of you in a little less formal setting, and that would be a great opportunity. And in the meantime, we'll start making sure your appointees are being invited to everything you're being invited to. And they're aware of all the chamber functions, all the other functions, so that they can go to the ones that fit their calendar.
I think those are all terrific ideas. I think the open house idea is something we kind of do already anyway, and maybe it's just a little bit more elaborate than we might have done in the past.
We might advertise it a little more as
yeah.
meet the new council.
But all good ideas, and I think all consistent with past practice and procedure.
I agree with that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure we, and I feel confident, as Kevin said, that both Scott and Gabe will put themselves out into the community to be learned and welcomed also. So I think that scheduling of those kind of things and opportunities to take the initiative to do that would be highly valuable for all of us.
Yeah, and one of the things you used to do also for candidates is to give them a City Hall 101.
Yeah.
And that's
yeah,
probably
so
a good
that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
We'll modify our other practice, because our other practice is in a contested election, we have to make sure every candidate gets treated exactly the same. And now I have two folks I can meet with extensively offline if you appoint them, much as I do with you. Mm-hmm. So it'd probably be a little more intense than what you're describing, because we'll be moving right into sort of that deeper dive investment in information for two folks who've stood up and said they'll be on the council for 5 years. So.
Yeah, you'll know what the issues are coming up at the beginning of the year. And, we're all our meetings are televised now, so if you don't come down here, you can just watch them on tape, kind of get a sense of the things that we're discussing now as it transitions into the start of your term. You can always say you also won with 20 votes. Those are the people that signed your petition. Now, if you want one more out, my wife says she's willing to talk to your wives if you have any questions about what it's like to be a council member's spouse. Yes? Yeah, speak up to here, please.
Gentlemen, it looks like you're about to be appointed. As a member of the public, I have a question that sort of reflects your discussion. Normally, if you were standing for a contested election between now and whatever the date is, and
Address us.
Oh, I'm sorry. The gentleman would be, if they were standing for election, they would be making themselves available to the public between now and November, whatever it is. Is it inappropriate for them to, on their own, without involvement of the city, to continue to put out, let's say, white papers or have their own private meet and greets? Is that something that is inappropriate, or how does that work?
So here's how I'll answer that question. I haven't had a chance to talk to Mr. Paulson or Mr. Candell about this point, but should you approve the resolution, quite a bit of the Brown Act and the FPPC regulations are going to go into effect right away. And so the answer is yes, they can have any engagement with the public they choose to, but Mr. Woodruff and I have to have a few conversations now with them and with actually our sitting council members about the effect of having 5 sitting council members and 2 council members who are scheduled to take seats, and what the rules are about how they engage each other after they've engaged the public. So that's a convoluted answer. I kept Sky from having to parse it into really heavy legal terms, but
Just a point of clarification, though, that happens even in elections. I mean, people get elected, and then there's a period of time between the time when everybody knows that they've been elected and when they actually sit down and serve. So
It does, but the window from certification to appointment
understand.
is often days, not months like we'll have here.
it can be. It certainly wasn't my case. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
I appreciate that distinction. It complicates things, but in principle, it's the same thing.
It is the same thing, but
But to this gentleman's point, it's an unusual situation that we're facing with people not having to put together a candidate position statement and submit it for publication. And I mean, it's an unusual situation. So I'm just trying to come up with an idea that can still allow public process and encourage the existing candidates to really take this as an opportunity to engage with people. So I think I've mentioned that already.
if you pass a resolution tonight, we will do things like set up a city email account. There will be ways for the public to contact the two appointees in the same way they would contact you. So if anyone in the community wants to engage, that'll be their way to do that. So,
But they're not until December, though, right?
well, we can give them access to that sort of thing now, so
Okay.
that the public has the ability to engage them. I think that would be a way to facilitate that, and we'll work to make sure that if folks call City Hall and want to reach out to the future council members, we can make sure that happens too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess, yes?
So I would just let Bridget Gleason again, Marin Park, Mobile Home Park. What I understand that all to mean is that it would be appropriate for us, for example, as we have considered doing with all of you, but particularly with the two new gentlemen who I don't know how much they have been here to hear our various presentations since July 17th. It would be appropriate to reach out to them and invite them to an event at Marin Park.
I don't
I
see
think
why not.
I would advise both you and the future appointees to talk to the city manager about any boundaries that might, because it has been an agenda item here.
Yes, does that affect our ability to
Yeah,
invite them to an event?
It might, the Brown Act.
So, not going deep into detail, you can invite any one of the council members to an event. It will get complicated if you want to invite 4 of them to an event. So I would encourage you, if that's something you want to do, I would reach out to council members either individually or in groups of 2, and that will avoid any issues.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I guess Councilmember Hilmer has started to make a motion. Would you like to repeat it, please?
I was ready to second Councilmember Harrow's motion.
Oh, okay, I lost track of that. All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the staff's recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Congratulations.
Seeing none?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was the last item on our agenda tonight. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.